Welcome back. This is Herpetological Highlights, and this is episode, I think, 206. And I'm Ben Marshall, and co-hosting, as always, is Tom Major.
Yo.
What do we have for folk this week, Tom?
So, we are going to be talking about lizards. We're going to be talking about a lizard from Cyprus, which is a lovely little Mediterranean island where I've actually been fortunate enough to spend quite a bit of time in my life.
So you're saying you've seen these lizards?
There. Oh, yeah. Seen a lot of them. Yeah, mate.
My first-hand experience with the study species. I like that.
Yes, I have. Yeah, they're pretty widespread. They're pretty common, and they're quite sort of big and impressive. You can't really help but notice them. So yeah, in this episode, we're going to be talking about a species of lizard from Cyprus. And yeah, should I just go ahead and introduce the paper?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, let's not mess around. So this one is by Golawska, Charalambidou, Surmacki and Golawska, 2024. Tourism influences escape behavior of lizards in relationship with human clothing color. Published in Scientific Reports. Fresh off the press.
This is not the first human clothing color impacting lizards paper we've had on the podcast, I don't think. I'm pretty sure there was one that was it? I don't think it was flight initiation distance. It might have been capture ease or something along those lines.
Yeah, wasn't it to do with anoles?
Yeah, and it was the whole dewlap color matching t-shirt color made them less flighty and therefore easier to capture. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, but it was a while ago.
Yeah, my recollection is similar. They sort of had, I think it was orange that they liked because the impressive males had the orange dewlap, and if the people were wearing orange clothes, the animals were a bit like, oh, what are you? Oh, hi. Rather than being like, oh my God, a predator.
It just lulls them into a false sense of security.
Yeah, that's my loose recollection. But yeah, we're talking about this species from Cyprus. So Cyprus is the third largest and third most populous island in the Mediterranean. If you're wondering where it is, it's east of Greece, north of Egypt, and south of Turkey.
Okay, so what are the wait a second? What are the top two then? Corsica.
Ooh. Corsica, you reckon, is bigger?
No, more populous.
More populous. I don't know. How many people live on Corfu? Is that a lot?
I don't think Corfu's very big.
Corfu's small, actually, yeah. Mate, I don't know, in all honesty. My knowledge of...
Sicily's going to be the biggest and most populous, then probably Corsica, then Cyprus. That would be my bet.
Sicily. Yeah, Sicily's a good bet. Yeah. All right. Well, we don't know, but it's a good guess. But yeah, we are in Cyprus, and we're talking about Laudakia cypriaca, aka the Cyprus rock agama. So this is a species from the family Agamidae. So if you want to imagine... Saxicolus. Yeah, it is Saxicolus. And if you want to imagine this beast, just imagine a slightly smaller, although not that much smaller, bearded dragon that has kind of a bit of black on its back and behind its neck, and with a kind of rougher tail and a more spiky back. So quite similar to the bearded dragon, but a little bit smaller. And yeah, great name, Cypriaca. The species epithet refers to its home in Cyprus. So this species was only given species status back in 2022. So congratulations, small lizard. Well, not even that small, medium lizard. You've done well. You've become a species. Before 2022, it was actually recognised as a subspecies of the starred agama, which is Laudakia stelio. And yeah, you asked if I'd seen this species. I have. They're all over the place in Cyprus. They'll sit very proudly on rocks, surveying their territory. So you see them sort of, if you're driving around, we were doing a lot of driving around in the pickup. I was working on a turtle conservation project there, volunteering on a turtle conservation project there.
Lizards were getting in the way.
Lizards were not, they tended not to get in the way, to be honest. I don't really remember seeing them across the road that often.
Okay.
They were generally just sitting on rocks, sort of proudly surveying the scenes as you drove past. So you'd drive past like a boulder and there'd just be a lizard there, just like, yes, hello, I'm a Cyprus rock agama and this is my area. And yeah, they're mainly enjoyers of invertebrates in terms of their diet, but they will eat vertebrates occasionally if they can catch them. And they will also eat some plant material. And they are themselves predated upon by quite a few things, which kind of, gives us a hint about how they might behave for this study. They get eaten by birds of prey, and they also get eaten by the very cool eastern Montpellier snake, Malpolon insignitus. That's just a massive colubrid, and the only snake I actually saw while I was in Cyprus, which was quite a treat to see. It was a big thing. The other thing worth mentioning in terms of a threat to these guys is domestic cats. Of course, they kill their fair share, and there are quite a lot of domestic cats on Cyprus, and I'm pretty sure they're also breeding out in the wild, so they got to watch out for those.
Classic, yeah.
Yeah, so, we've got this situation where these lizards have predators. They've got a good reason to be wary. But in this study, they're not using sort of true predators, although we could be argued to be true predators, but they are using humans as the kind of predator model in this, which is fine, which is commonly done in studies like this because animals do consider us predators. We are, after all, large, dangerous mammals.
I was going to say, even if we're not sort of direct predators of lizards, big enough and scary enough to not really matter whether you're actually going to eat lizard or not. Scary enough regardless, right?
Yep. It's easy to forget that we are megafauna. But yeah, so previous research on these lizards has shown that the wariness of this species depends on how much tourist pressure there is in the area which they inhabit. So Cyprus has millions and millions of tourists every year, and previous studies showed that agamas in really touristy areas had a lower, so they wouldn't try and run away until the observer got closer. So they're kind of this flight initiation distance is lower.
It's a pretty common metric used in a lot of bird studies and stuff too.
Right on, yeah. So it's just this measure of sort of how flighty animals are. How soon do they run away as you approach them? At what distance will they flee? And these authors wanted to build on that by doing more testing and adding to the sort of study with the colour of clothing that people were wearing. So they were curious to see whether or not more touristy areas were agamas were more flighty, and also whether or not the colour of clothing they were wearing made them more flighty. And they did this study in the southeast of the island in a forest park, a national forest park called Cape Greco. And they had these transects, which are just routes they walked, which were either busy with tourists or in nearby sort of fallow agricultural areas where the tourist pressure was lower. But crucially, though, they were all within this national forest park, so they were relatively close to each other. And they were testing two things. First, the distance where the agamas noticed them. So how far away did they clock on that the observer was coming? And then secondly, what was the distance where they actually fled? And they did this wearing 3 different colours of t-shirt.
Just before you go on, just give a little bit more context. So touristy area, you're sort of dealing with around 2.8, so around 3 people per hour milling about. Non-touristy area, you're dealing with 0.1. So dramatically, like just dramatically different levels of foot traffic.
Yeah, so essentially in the non-touristy areas, they might occasionally see the farmer who works the land, but it's not. Yeah, I mean, 0.1 an hour. Yeah, that's like a quarter of a person a day.
Right, you might not even see anybody during the whole day, basically.
Yeah, so a couple of times a week someone might come past. So yeah, I think there's definitely good reason to think that might make them less wary or more wary of people because they see them so infrequently. So yeah, that's the kind of setup. And they did 3 colours of t-shirt as they approached. They used red because it's really conspicuous in the environment. It's visible from a long way away. And there isn't really much red in this natural environment.
Right. And
it's quite a rare colour.
Lizards can see red, right? Because they have a visual system similar to birds.
Yeah. They did their homework. I mean, I don't know that I can't speak for all lizards, but they do know that this lizard can see red.
Right.
And the second colour was green because that sort of matched the surroundings. This Cyprus is kind of quite arid and rocky, but it does have a reasonable amount of vegetation. So there's a lot of green in the environment. So they selected green as this neutral colour. And then the final one they used was grey, which corresponds to the colour of the lizards. They're pretty plain, they're pretty grey. And it's kind of generally believed that species are more tolerant of colours that resemble colours they have on their bodies. So it's
I do like the idea of a lizard seeing this sort of 6-foot ape coming towards him and be like, no, it's fine. That's a lizard.
It's grey.
It's all right.
So I don't need to worry. But yeah, I mean, essentially it's more just oh, this is a colour which doesn't excite them necessarily, or...
Yeah.
They're sort of tolerant of it. I don't know. Yeah, they're used to seeing it on their own leg, I guess. But yeah, so so one observer dutifully walked around loads and loads and loads and encountered loads of lizards and measured the distance at which they were willing to notice them and flee. And I mean, should we just roll straight into the results?
I think so because it's kind of clean. The one thing that you sort of forgotten to mention methods-wise is they're also investigating that sort of interaction between the tourist area and the shirts. So it's got this like dual comparison, is whether there are different reactions to the different shirts, but also whether those reactions differ in these two locations, right? So it's this interaction that they're really getting at.
Yeah. And so, I mean, let's talk about it. Unsurprisingly, they were quicker to flee in non-tourist areas. So, nice figure there. So there's a nice figure showing that the non-tourist areas, basically, they just consistently fled at a longer distance. So they didn't tend to flee in tourist areas. Their sort of flight response was a bit blunted. They didn't really flee until the observer was about 2 meters away. In contrast, they fled at between 3 and 5 meters away in the non-tourist areas and fled most quickly or soonest when the observer was wearing red. So you can get closer wearing green or grey, but if you're wearing red, they're going to flee at a further away distance. And that only stands for the non-tourist areas where they're kind of unaccustomed to seeing people,
right?
And that's likely because red's this more conspicuous color.
Worst case scenario is non-touristy area, red t-shirt, lizards are going to book it like 5 meters away from you. Oh, sorry, be alert 5-6 meters away from you. They're going to sort of book it 4 meters away from you.
Yeah. And so red's a more conspicuous color, so that makes sense in that they probably just notice it sooner. And we mentioned at the top of the show, some lizards are a bit more fond of the color red, maybe like anoles, orange, but not in this case. And it's not surprising because these agamas are kind of always just grey. But it is quite telling how sort of blunted the predatory response to humans is in touristy areas. And so
massively so.
If you do want to jump on a agama, your best bet is to go to somewhere with tourists because they won't be expecting you to do it. You're not frightening. Do you think this has much of an impact in terms of the way they behave in the presence of their native predators, or would that be like overreaching?
I think that's overreaching because I think that would be doing them a bit of a disservice, because that would be assuming that the agamas couldn't tell the difference between a human predator and a non-human predator. And if they are having like an effect of just the t-shirt, they probably have some, I don't know. I would give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
and that's also presupposing that their predator response for some predators would be the same as it would be for a human predator, right? For like maybe a bird of prey, fleeing might not be the best option. Maybe sitting still and relying on crypsis is. And I don't know how they respond in those scenarios.
Yeah. But it's cool because, it just goes to show these lizards aren't just, they're not robots. They do become accustomed to things. Yeah. They start to realize that humans aren't a threat. Realistically speaking, if you're a lizard and you're wasting all your time scuttling away every time a person walks past, if you're seeing them, 3 times an hour, if you have to leave your basking position or whatever it might be, every 20 minutes, you're wasting a lot of energy. And, reptiles tend to be quite energy conservative animals. Right. So these things are considering their approach to predators on the fly.
And I think that's really hitting on the good news here is that habituation, potentially, is probably beneficial for the lizards in those areas if there is not an associated cost of being more likely to be depredated by non-human predators. But without that information, I think it's kind of hard to tell whether it's good or bad. But on the face of it, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic for these little Cypriot lizards.
Yeah, I had a look on iNaturalist, and they're really, really widely distributed, and they do seem to be persisting in areas with a lot of human pressure as well, especially sort of around the coastline. They seem to be doing quite well. And I mean, they're simple. They have simple needs. It's like you said, they're saxicolous. They like rocks, and they eat bugs broadly. So I think they will eat a bit of veg. So yeah, they're probably doing just fine. And they're nice lizards. They're nice to see around. They're big. They're chunky. So there we go. The old Cyprus rock agamas, Laudakia cypriaca, are responding to the presence of human pressure from tourism by becoming less flighty. So we're going from a reptile. Well, we're going from a sort of a gamid to a skink here. So we're staying in the lizard world. Should we move on to our species of the bioweek?
Let's go for species of the bioweek, yeah.
Okay, so we have here a paper by Wang, Li, Mu, Zhu, and Che, 2024, a new species of the genus Tropidophorus from China, Vietnam border region in southeastern Yunnan province, China, published in Zootaxa.
Back to Yunnan. I'm sure the last time we had a species of the bye week from Yunnan, we'd be like, well, this won't be the last, and lo and behold.
Yeah, it is. It really is a bit of a hotbed. I don't know where these...
Isn't it? It's the karst landscape stuff, right?
It is the karsts, and there is also a massive institution in Kunming. Yeah, in Kunming, and that's where these guys are from. So, makes sense. It's not far away from Kunming, these places, so it's probably a nice little car ride to the karst environments, try and find some lizards.
Convenience is what you're saying then.
Well, if you're going to try and discover a species, why not do one that's local? But yeah. So we got another species, and yeah, like you say, it's a tropical karst landscape. Yunnan province is in southeastern China, close to the Vietnam border. And these Tropidophorus skinks are water skinks. So they are a diverse group of semi-aquatic skinks, hence the name, water skinks.
That's right.
And they inhabit these tropical and subtropical regions in Indochina and Southeast Asia. Prior to this paper, there were 29 species, so already quite speciose. And during some surveys of southeastern Yunnan province in 2023, 2 specimens of Tropidophorus were collected from Maguan County, which is in Wenshan Prefecture, and they were like, what are these? And did their morphological analysis, did their genetic analysis, and they've decided they're going to identify and describe a new species, new to science. So, should we get into the etymology first? They called it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a
Tropidophorus vonsk. Oh, yeah, the name's second to very few, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Tropidophorus vonsk. So yeah, this new species name vonsk is derived from the local language of the Miao people, which is one of the main ethnic minority groups at the type locality, and it means dragon. So
how much?
Yes,
it's on point. I mean, it's a kind of dragony looking lizard. It's got these sort of chunky scales that. So it's quite a heavy bodied skink. Quite a broad head that's not too far from the width of its body. So it's got this quite contiguously sausage like form. Quite sort of slaty dark grey in coloration with little sort of highlights and speckles of a sort of browny. I was going to say sort of browny gold, but that might be overplaying it a little bit.
I think it's a bit gold. I would have said gold. I like
a little bit gold. Little bit gold. Okay.
Yeah.
Only about 10 centimeters SVL, 9 centimeters, 10 centimeters SVL,
and then about the same again for tail, right? Looks like it.
Perhaps. Yes.
Just looking at the image, it looks like it's about that long.
Yes.
And yeah,
if that's what TAL stands for, then almost exactly the same again for tail.
Right on. And so, yeah, the reason they called it vonsk is because it resembles a miniature dragon, but also because in the local culture, dragons are important mythological figures, and Yangi vonsk means calling for dragon, which is this big festival that the Miao people celebrate every 12 years. It says celebrated, so maybe not so much anymore, but in the past they would have sacrificed livestock, set fireworks alight, and sort of worship dragons during this period. And the reason for that is they hoped that dragons would visit them and bring proper rains for the crops, which is just a great story and a really nice reason to name this Tropidophorus vonsk in recognition of the local people and their dialect. Big boots to fill in terms of dragons.
Yeah.
We got quite a few famous sort of dragon lizards, haven't we? The bearded dragon, obviously, we mentioned earlier. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd back a bearded dragon in a fight against this thing, but maybe it's not all about warfare. It's definitely quite jazzy looking compared to a bearded dragon, although bearded dragons obviously have a lot of character. But
hey, we can't judge character from a series of images and a species description.
Yeah,
you've had numerous encounters with bearded dragons, and
that's true. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty close friends with one for a while.
Exactly.
Yeah. My cousin had one.
That's what I'm calling out here.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're calling it the dragon water skink as its English common name, and it inhabits these tropical karst forests. So the images in the paper of the habitat are lovely. It just looks like a really nice forest with some karst sort of rock outcroppings. The karst rocks tend to be this kind of like greeny grey colour. They're quite pretty. And yeah, always endemic species, well, not always, but often endemic species in these outcroppings. And sure enough, they found this, the holotype, the very first one they found, was in a narrow rock crevice at night where it sort of anchored itself deep inside, and it was near a stream. And they subsequently found them on forest floor at night, so they may be nocturnal, they may be diurnal. I would have guessed diurnal, being a skink.
I would have guessed diurnal, but maybe the ones they found were just confused.
Maybe. Well, the one inside a rock at night, that's sort of that's
classic
diurnal behaviour, because that's where they're having a little rest, but don't know. So there we go. Welcome to science. Water skink, Tropidophorus vonx, aka the dragon water skink. So, have we got any other business for this episode?
I mean, I feel I'm fairly certain you do. I don't. I'm all right.
Well, I've got some, and then we've got some collective AOB as well, Ben. So first off, we had an email from Seb Hoofer, who is one of the co-authors of the papers about skink intelligence that we did a couple of episodes ago now. And Seb said, talking about the episode, he just said, I just listened to it. Great work on synthesizing the paper. I'm with you on the marshmallows. Oh, I was talking about marshmallows because there was that test.
Yeah, you were saying that you wouldn't stand for it and you'd consume the marshmallow without any hesitation or delay, and therefore fail to demonstrate any sort of what was the term used?
Inhibitory control.
Inhibitory control. There you go.
Yeah, but it was also just that I don't like marshmallows and I would eat one so I didn't have to eat any more. So it was a bit of a confusing one. Yeah, but that was what the paper was about, inhibitory control.
Yeah, in somewhat good company with the skinks. So
yeah,
even if your motivations differ.
But Seb said, I'm with you on the marshmallows, eat the one to escape the looming threat of more to come. And we met Seb at the World Congress for Herpetology recently, and he confirmed legend. So yeah, Seb said, he also said, bit of a flex, but guess what? I actually got the Crinia signifericals, so that was the frog call from the previous episode. He said, they're pretty common at my field sites, and I do acoustic monitoring, so I should really know their calls. Nice. Okay, well, fair play.
There we go.
Done.
See, that's the only people that can get them are people that are actively working with that species and the acoustics.
Yeah. And so he said, I've got a few little add-ons for the paper. So you mentioned the absolute brain size and intelligence correlation. So I was talking about how in mammals and birds, generally, as you get a bigger brain, you become more intelligent with that. So like, humans and dolphins and whales and stuff have massive brains and they're pretty clever, etc. But Seb said, in some groups that's certainly the case, like in primates and birds, but it doesn't transfer as well across classes. As Ben mentioned, reptile brains are generally smaller and less complex, yet some reptiles exhibit more complex behaviours and cognitive abilities, suggesting there isn't a straightforward linear relationship between absolute brain size and intelligence overall. It's likely more about the size of certain brain regions and neuron density, but so far not much work exists on reptiles in that field. So well done, Ben. And then he said, as for our skinks that showed no learning during the semi-transparent cylinder phase, it's interesting. So the semi-transparent cylinder was made of mesh to allow not just visual inhibition, but also olfactory, because they can smell the food through the mesh straight on, which they couldn't in the opaque cylinder phase, where the smell just diffuses through the sides. Because the olfactory sense is more developed than visual in many lizards, it might have been that the olfactory trigger was too strong to overcome for some, and they just couldn't learn or transfer learning from the opaque one. In the end, intelligence is incredibly difficult to study and understand in humans, but now imagine studying something that doesn't speak and at the best of times just stares at you with blank eyes. So a lot of it we just don't understand and just have to try and understand some of these cognitive abilities step by step. And he sent us in an image of one of these skinks attempting to get through. So this is a gidgey skink having trouble understanding the cylinder task. So this is where they're supposed to go around the side to find the treat. Yes, absolutely hilarious. What an amazing looking skink. And I don't know that I'd seen a gidgey skink before, but that thing is damn cool, man. Look at that tail. Mm-hmm. Really awesome little spiky. It's like a big fat short skink with a spiky tail, kind of like a mini blue tongue skink with a really spiky tail and like some sort of posh dragony spikes around the head. Very cool image.
I see that.
So thanks to Seb for that. And if people are trying to remember or don't know what we're talking about, we were talking about this. Can skinks do inhibitory control, which is where they learn? What is it? They learn there's food inside an object.
Right. The idea is to demonstrate some ability to delay immediate gratification for whatever like resource. So it's this. In the case of the study, it was this cylinder. So it was don't just run straight at the food that you can see in the cylinder. You have to go round in through the sides of the cylinder. And the idea of being able to see something, process that, and then recognize what behavior you need to do without just immediately acting upon there's food, I've got to go eat it, is kind of the idea.
Right on. Yeah. So there we go.
But yeah.
No, I think that was good. So yeah, and the only other thing to mention is that our paper, Ben, the Aesculapian snake spatial ecology paper, is out as a preprint on bioRxiv. So it's currently still in review. So take any results therein with a pinch of salt. But I'll put a link in the show notes.
As far as you trust Tom.
Well, and Ben, you're there too, mate. But yeah, so this was like the first proper meaty paper coming out of my PhD research. And yeah, Ben, you're on it too because of your invaluable help with all manner of things and helping to even conceive the study. And so, yeah, really exciting to have that out. It's in review currently, so hopefully we'll be able to sort of touch on it more in the podcast, although I feel like people probably know everything about Aesculapian snake.
No, we'll do an episode on it. We'll do an
Aesculapian snake special.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes if people want to check that out. Cool. That's it, I think, as far as I can think for any other business. Sure? No, I'm not sure. Tell me.
Didn't you have something about pythons?
Oh, I did. Yeah, so
there you go.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Your business better than my own.
I don't know. I've lost track of my own business. So yeah, this was a paper coming out of Bangladesh. Just a short note. But yeah, very unusual observation where two pythons got into it and the Burmese python ate a reticulated python. So this is really unusual. I mean, what is it? Reticulated python's the longest snake in the world.
Longest snake in the world, yeah.
Burmese python's probably like fourth. So yeah, the longest snake being eaten by the less longest snake. And I mean, when
you say it like that, that doesn't sound so outlandish because I mean, you know, you'd have to all line them up in length order, and then the last one standing might be a reticulated python, sure, but
yeah,
you know,
but still,
pythons have to be littler and bigger at different times during their lives.
Yeah, it's true. But I think the reticulated python that was eaten was actually longer than the Burmese python. At least that's the way it was reported.
Interesting.
So yeah, maybe it had to like concertina it as it went in there. But yeah, pretty awesome observation. Really unusual. You don't really tend to see pythons predating other pythons, really. So yeah, to see a Burmese python preying on a reticulated python, and like I say, this took place in Bangladesh. Really, really cool observation. And yeah, can only say congratulations to the authors on finding it and managing not to disturb it. And in the picture, it really looks like, yeah, it's being eaten tail first, which is kind of horrible. And I don't know, that python looks like it's pretty awake. Yeah, it doesn't actually say in the paper which python was bigger. So actually looking at the image, it looks like the Burmese python is quite considerably larger than the reticulated python. I read a news article about it, but it was garbage, so that was obviously wrong.
Just spreading trash. Okay.
Yeah, I should never believe anything you read in the media about reptiles. It's all no, that's not fair. There are some really good journalists out there, but most of them are not. They are bad. So,
well, when it comes down to snake eating snake, the chances are you're going to get more hyperbolic stuff than you are, you know, just the facts.
Yeah, if people are science journalists, they tend to do an all right job, but if they're not, they tend to just sensationalize and spout nonsense. So there we go. That really is the end of all the business, right, Ben?
I believe so. Yes, I think that is all the business dealt with for this episode. We are free.
Okay, all right. So I think, I'll just say, if you want to get in touch with us, if we need correcting, or if you've got a question, or if you just want to send us a message, herphighlights@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media, herp_highlights. You can follow me, Tom_E_major. And yeah, that's it. I think all that remains to be said. Oh, thank you very much to our Patreons, patreon.com/herphighlights if you want to support the podcast. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for listening.